Hey guys, welcome back. I know I haven't made a video in a while. I've been very busy. It's been just a fantastic couple of weeks in my life with, maybe I'll share that with you guys later. But for now, I wanted to do this video on UBI. So I encourage you guys to stick around till the end. You don't necessarily have to agree with what I'm saying, but I hope it does encourage you to dig a little deeper and do a little more research, because what you're being told on the surface of this isn't what it is. Like always, we are being led astray. So you really need to put in the time. I've spent countless months researching this and digging deep and looking at examples of where this leads. So I hope you guys aren't just taking this at face value and believing what you're being told, because it does not lead to a good place. And in this video, I'll be making the case for that. So I hope you guys stick around till the end. And if you like this content, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, I'll get right into it. So what inspired this video was a little argument or debate I got into on Twitter this morning with these people that are advocating for universal basic income. So I want to explain to you guys really where that leads and why it isn't a good thing. So of course, on surface value, it looks like a good thing. They're going to give you free money. So you're going to get a basic personal amount that they're going to give you. Let's say it's $20,000 every year. And so for a lot of people, that looks great. On the surface, how could free money not be a good thing? But what it does is anytime they are giving money out for free, nothing is free. It all has to come from somewhere. So actually, let me make a distinction here between money and currency. So what we have, these currencies that we use, the government fiat currencies, are not actually money. They are a currency, which is the current C, the C, economic C that we're doing business in. So that is what it is. It's the current form of economic trade that we're using, a medium of exchange that we're using. So those dollars that they're creating are supposed to represent an input. So it's basically a monetary equivalent of your energy. So when you're working, you're putting energy in, and that currency is supposed to represent that energy. But the issue that we're having is they're creating this currency out of thin air. So the governments are going and they're printing this money out of thin air, and they're not actually putting in any work for it. So in the past, the way it worked is a certain amount of dollars are supposed to represent a certain amount of input. So if I go and grow a bunch of apples or potatoes and I change that for the currency, and now I can use that and go and buy some service that I need, if I need some dental work or whatever. So the way that it was intended to work is that you are supposed to put in some kind of contribution in exchange for that currency instead of trading directly. So if I was an apple farmer and I needed some dental work, it isn't necessarily the case that the dentist needs apples. So by creating a currency, we had a medium of exchange where it was supposed to represent a certain amount of input. But now what's happening is they're just giving this money out for free. So they're creating it out of thin air, and they're giving it usually to people that are actually almost always to people that are on the inside. They're high-level corporations, they're banks, they're high net worth individuals. And this is kind of the first time during this pandemic that we've seen it where they're giving it to just the common people, that through the form of here in Canada, it's CERB. I don't know what they called it in the US, but they're basically depositing it directly into the accounts of the people. The problem with this is it creates inflation. So as soon as you're giving money out for free, now there's more of this currency in circulation, but there's still the same amount of goods and services in circulation. So what that does is it push asset prices higher. So the people that own the assets don't mind this because they already own the houses, they already own the stock market, they own all of the valuable stuff, the companies, and all of this. So As they create more currency, the people that own these assets demand more and more of it because the currency becomes easier and easier to get. So if the currency is easier to get, but the assets are harder to get, of course, you're going to demand more of the currency for the same assets. So this is the issue. And what it does is it creates a huge wealth and income gap. And this can be seen if you look at examples like Venezuela. They were very rich, or they're the wealthiest oil nation. Well, they have the most amount of oil per capita in anywhere in the world, and they were using that wealth to give out all kinds of free social programs, free education, and they were they gave out gas pretty much for 2 cents a liter or something. So it looked very good to the people. They were getting a lot of stuff for free and paid for. And that looks like a good thing on the surface. But what happened was the price of gas changed, the currency started to collapse, the government couldn't keep up with all their promises to pay for all of this stuff for free, and then that basically led to a currency crisis, and the government basically collapsed, and then the people that were depending on the government all of a sudden couldn't get food, they couldn't, all of a sudden gas prices started rising up to normal prices, and people were used to getting these handouts from the government. So this is kind of where it will lead, and that's where we have to be very careful. The money or the energy has to come from somewhere. So if you're going to tax the rich, that's kind of the other narrative that these guys are pushing, is that, oh, we can just go after the wealthy. That isn't the case. The wealthy always know how to shelter their money, their income from tax. So that is the case. The corporations they pay very little or no tax at all. They have ways to shelter their income from tax. So if you're going to expect this money that they're going to give out in UBI, if you're expecting that to come from tax, well, that will come from taxing the working class. And the working class are already bearing the burden of basically propping everything up. So the middle class bear the biggest burden. They bear more of a burden than the poor, and they bear more of a burden than the ultra rich. So if you're going to go after the middle class, that's really hurting the most productive members of society. And if you think you're going to be able to go after the corporations and the ultra rich, you're wrong, because what will happen is you'll try and raise taxes on them, and they'll just leave jurisdictions. They'll go to another country that's offering tax shelters, and then they'll basically, this is what they're already doing. They have their corporations in those jurisdictions so that the corporations pay next to no tax at all. So there's no way to go after these guys. And if you want to say, oh, okay, well, we'll put a global tax, they'll find a way around it. The policymakers are the ultra rich. Their democracy is an illusion. So these guys are the ones putting the policy into play. So if they're going to allow this policy to come into play, you know that they have a way to avoid the taxes for themselves. That's just the way the game works. It's very unfortunate, but it's a reality. So let's not buy into this illusion. The reason why they're pushing UBI is because they need inflation to continue. And basically what we've seen with the pandemic is that the economy was in trouble. We lost all kinds of jobs. And what should have happened is a deflationary period, because people are no longer working, and that should put downward pressure on prices. But what happened is the government's created more currency than they've ever created in history before, and they put that into circulation, and that drove asset prices even higher. So even though our economy started tanking and we lost all kinds of jobs, asset prices went through the roof. Real estate went through the roof. Gas prices went through the roof. Food prices, used car prices. The cost of any good or service is all going through the roof, and asset prices are getting pushed out of reach from the younger generations. And the reason why they want this is because they own all the assets, so it doesn't hurt them. They own the stock market, they own real estate. So as prices go up, they get to raise the rents on all the homes they own so that they can keep up with the rising price of food. So it doesn't hurt them. But for people that don't own real estate, people that are stuck renting, they're the ones that lose the wealth because now prices of food and the cost of living is going up, but they don't have, their wages don't really move. So they can't keep up with the rising cost of assets. And that is why the new slogan is, you will own nothing and you will be happy. That is where these people want things to go because they own all the assets. They own all of the real estate that they're planning on pushing us all to just become renters. And that's what they want. They want us to be paying them money all the time. They don't want us to have a chance to acquire these assets like they have. So this is the illusion. This is why these elites are pushing this narrative of UBI. Do not buy into it. I encourage you to dig deeper and really learn about economics and where this leads. Nothing comes from for free. It all comes from somewhere. Taxation is theft. You're stealing the economic input that somebody else has put their own time in to create that money, and now you're trying to go after them and tax them to pay somebody that just wants to sit on the couch and play video games and get a UBI check. So you're incentivizing people to be less productive by paying them to sit at home instead of incentivizing people to be productive and actually contribute to society. And then what you're also doing is you're basically incentivizing people to be less productive, because if you're a contributing member of society and you're working class and you're working all these hours and you're getting taxed more to pay for the UBI, well, then it's getting harder and harder to get ahead by just working a job. So eventually you just say, well, why am I even trying? So you're incentivized to stop even trying, stop being productive, because you can't keep up with the rising asset prices. So the whole thing is a downward spiral, and that's where it'll lead. It'll lead to even more disparity, a larger wealth and income gap, because the rich will own everything, will be forced to rent off of them, will be reliant on government handouts, will be so reliant, we'll have to sit around and wait for that check to come in, and we'll eventually it'll lead to a place where we don't know how much that check will buy us. So in the beginning, it might look okay, but once we get reliant on that, it'll buy you less and less. And pretty soon you'll be eating rice and beans, or like Venezuela, where you basically can't even get food. So that's where this will lead. UBI is a horrible thing. We need to incentivize people to actually be productive members of society and to work for their assets and that, but UBI is doing the exact opposite, and it's increasing the wealth and income gap, and it's inflating asset prices, making it harder and harder for just new members of society to acquire assets and to have a fighting chance in this system. It's a lie that we have capitalism. We don't. It's crony capitalism. It's kleptocracy, and it's closer to socialism, but it's socialism for the rich, and then it's capitalism for the poor, where if we go bankrupt, we're on the hook for it. But if the big corporations go bankrupt, then there's a taxpayer buyout. So they use our money to bail out these corporations so they have no downside risk. And that is not capitalism. That is socialism for the rich. So there's a double standard. These guys get bailouts where we're on the hook. We have to pay taxes, they don't. So this is the thing. If we actually had true capitalism, there would be no subsidies for the rich, no subsidies for these big corporations, and they'd actually have to fail when they made bad business decisions. So we're being fed a lie. Do not buy into this lie. Diversify. Get yourself some real money in the sense of gold, silver, Bitcoin. I've talked about this in a lot of previous videos, why this is real money and why the fiat currency is failing, why it is doomed, why they're debasing it, why it's losing its purchasing power. So it's really important that you learn these things so that you can become diversified and put this energy that you're putting in, don't hold it in these government currencies. Start buying Bitcoin, buy some gold, buy some silver, and diversify, because this is true money. They can't debase it. And that is how we have a fighting chance. And if they're going to try and really if they keep raising the tax burden on the productive members of society, it will force people to start using untraceable digital currencies. And that is where this will lead. People will start using currencies that can't be traced, and then they will lose their taxpayer base. The productive members and the intelligent people in society will all find ways around it, because the productive members can't carry the burden for the entire society. It'll incentivize people to use these currencies. They'll lose their tax base, and the whole thing will come spiraling down. And then all those that are dependent on these government handouts, well, basically, they won't have those anymore and they won't be productive. They won't have any land to be able to grow their own food. They won't own any assets to generate an income. And then they'll really be forced onto the street. So, this is where this leads. You need to educate yourself on this. Don't buy into the lie that UBI is the solution. Get inspired, find a way to be productive, to generate your own income, and to diversify and get yourself some real assets. So, I hope that all makes sense. I hope you guys are inspired to dig a little deeper. And a great book on this is The Sovereign Individual. It really outlines where this will all lead, how this extortion from governments pushes people into the digital economy, into encrypted currencies, and people will find a way to evade the tax because they just can't bear the burden of paying for all of society. It's hard enough to be productive enough to take care of yourself and your own family, and you can't bear the burden of looking after all these people that do not want to work. And the more you incentivize people not to work, the more of them there's going to be, and the bigger burden it's going to be on society. So I hope that all makes sense. I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.